Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We're supposed to get some snow this weekend in Buffalo, but it's January, so why the hell is that a surprise? Russ, start us off with some pre-show stuff. I have a feeling
baseball. Yeah. I mean, baseball's been in the news. It's in a way, it's probably the best hot stove they've had in years, even if it's negative press. But so Carlos Beltran stepped down. He was part of the Astros cheating scandal. The two things about that are interesting is the first one is I would never have hired him in the first place, and a lot of Met fans felt that way because he has no managerial experience at any level whatsoever. But the other part is the Mets had days to make sure this sort of sped up before we found out about his niece's burner account and everything else. And yesterday they had a day for Mike Piazza where they made a Mike Piazza drive in Port St. Lucie. And they, of course, asked the GM, Brodie Van Wagenen, about this situation. And he basically commented, I'm only talking about Mike Piazza. But they could have avoided that whole thing. And so to me, it's like that's just part and parcel of the way the Mets handle things. The Altuve thing, I don't think we should all jump to conclusions. We don't know what that was under his jersey. What if it's a cross? What if it's like you don't know what it is? We don't know for sure he was wearing anything electronic. I think people are getting a little crazy with that. Let MLB sort of run its investigation and see where that goes. And then the last part is with Mike Trout talking about taking steroids for a thyroid. Somebody in my family has had thyroid issues their whole life.
Is that what it was, Russ? Because I didn't see the full explanation. Okay.
Yeah, and so there's two types of thyroid problems. I don't want to be a doctor here and explain it all, but basically, if it's a low dose steroid that really helps you be normal for your thyroid, you have to take that. Otherwise, you can't function well as a human being. It doesn't necessarily aid him in being stronger or helping him on the field. So I would cool my jets with that.
Kev, I've been sort of amused by this slowly unfolding scandal in Major League Baseball because there's been chatter about the Astros cheating for a couple years, and Major League Baseball didn't really address it until Mike Fiers came out and made the accusation publicly. And then, and the funny thing is that yesterday, Jessica Mendoza, who's a reporter for ESPN, who also works for the Mets, sort of attacked Mike Fiers initially about, not going through channels and not handling it the right way. The thing is, do we know that this would have even been something that would have led to a suspension and fines if they had kept it in-house? I don't think so.
I can't imagine. It's such a complicated story because sign stealing isn't illegal until you organize it to the level they did.
Right.
In fact, it's part of baseball tradition. The idea of a guy standing on second base, peering in as the catcher tries to disguise his and changes his rotation. That's all part of it. And then trying to figure out how to let the batter know, what's happening. It's what's remarkable in all this is think about the this kind of speaks to the talent level of major league players, which is, okay, we all know how little time there is between recognition of the pitch being called and the windup beginning. So what the Astros did was stole that pitch, told the guy on the trash cans who signaled what was going on, and then a baseball player had to react in 1.2 seconds to take advantage of it. And the amazing thing is some of them can, which is really remarkable, when you think about it. But, I've really been impressed with how baseball, handled this. And the only thing I worry about is this could be the tip of the iceberg. I don't think they're the only team ever to find some measure of sophistication in their sign stealing. I would bet there's other teams that have maybe not done it the exact same way, but had a system by which they were trying to help their hitters.
Well, I'll tell you, Kev, I went and tried out for the New Haven Cutters when I was in my 40s, really just to write a story. And I made the first cut, so I got to play in a simulated game. And the pitcher was on the mound, and he was throwing about 88 miles an hour. Now, it's not 100 like the majors, but I'm also a hack, right? And so one of my teammates stole his signs and said, if he reaches deep into his glove, he's throwing a split finger fastball. So the hit that I got was an infield hit, and it was off a split finger fastball because I knew at least that's what was coming. I just didn't know where it was going to be, but it is a big help when you get it. It's amazing. If you take that guesswork out, it helps a lot.
Yeah, but that's tipping his pitches, which gives you a lot more time to react.
Right.
They were stealing signs, which is a much bigger.
Yeah,
if you're watching a full wind up and notice by how they're gripping the baseball or everything, that's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Than a guy stealing what the catcher's putting down, and then you're reacting to instant information of a fastball or a breaking pitch or so forth. And it's like I said, first of all, I think they've handled it well, but it's really complicated because because some sign stealing obviously is not illegal.
Well, the funny thing is, and we'll end this after in a couple seconds here, and then get to the hockey stuff. But the guy who sort of broke this on Twitter is he goes by Jomboy, Jomboy on Twitter. He was the one who came up with the video that had the banging of the garbage cans. He was on the Michael Kay show yesterday and talked about how apparently most major league teams are using an app that was developed by a little league coach that essentially plots the sequence of what the catcher puts down in terms of numbers. It's fed into this app, and then as they go through, it diagnoses what the actual pitch is going to be. It does it by some sort of mathematical, analytics or something of that nature. So all the teams are using this, so that it must pass muster for Major League Baseball. But the stuff that's going on in terms of whether there's a buzzer on somebody's uniform, I mean, it's getting into like CIA kind of stuff. It's getting a little ridiculous.
Well, I do like the idea if they're going to use the Apple Watch and that's how the catcher and the pitcher are going to communicate. That's good because that is instantaneous. And Kev, it does bring up the thought that why do we use the bullpen phone anymore? Why can't we just text it? It doesn't make sense. The bullpen phone doesn't make sense.
Well, it does, but now that someone's going to be. They're in addition to an analytics guy, you're going to have a computer hacker who will hack into the Apple phone.
Right.
He'll be sitting in your dugout,
right,
with this thing trying to figure it out, and he'll say about the second inning, "I got it," and then they'll decode it. The level of sophistication. I just saw two people having a conversation about the role of manager now. We talked about the other day about reading that the new Browns coach in the NFL having to submit his game plan to the analytics department on Friday to see if it's viable from an analytics perspective. Well, we're reaching the point now where a baseball GM is going to say to a manager, you have to use the analytics to determine your moves. Well, I mean, can we just do this electronically from, just have a gatekeeper to make all the baseball decisions? Is the days of the manager going to be, out the door? Everything will be done by statistics. I don't know. And it just seems like the human element is getting diminished as we.
Well, a manager still has to have a gut feel, though, on sometimes pulling a pinch hitter.
Well, I think you and I believe that, but I'm saying is it possible that we're going to reach that point where someone will say that,
I mean, communication is allowed in the NFL between the press box and the coaching staff up there, and the coaches down on the ground, and even on the quarterback. So you would think that Major League Baseball might get on that page and develop some sort of communication system between the pitcher, the catcher, and maybe the manager, so they can verbally do the signs instead of actually having to go through the whole thing. But you're right. If somebody had, a lot of people believe the election was hacked 3 years ago. Do you think it's going to be a challenge to hack the communications of a pitcher, a catcher, and a manager? Probably not a problem. But
they should just use ham radios. Nobody uses them anymore, so they'll be hard to hack.
CD radios.
Yeah, it is interesting, but our little sport and probably basketball are the two sports where in-game analytics aren't as crucial as the other two sports. In football, because there's play calling, there's communications, and there's hackability there, and there's things that can be stolen. You can stand and watch how those two guys on the sideline are sending in plays, and we certainly can do this in baseball because we're dealing with it now. At least in hockey, there are no plays that although we seem to be worried about it because we cover up our coaches cover up their mouths when they're talking to their assistant coaches on the bench. So,
and when they're using the whiteboard for like that last play of the game and stuff, they don't leave it out there.
Well, that's why Babcock used to draw his plays on the top of the dasher on the bench and then wipe it off. I think they wiped it off after he was done with it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, all
and
that.
All the teams, they used to be sort of lackadaisical about the game plan that they would leave up on the board sometimes when we get in there as the media. Now it's completely wiped clean. We see nothing.
Yeah. Well, going back to baseball, again, this is all part of the same conversation. I think still managers believe that when to change pitchers, the human element of that is still in it. But apparently, and I really didn't, pay much attention to this, is that you can easily divine a program that will kind of speak to when's the proper time to change pitchers and who should come in at which time, and going well beyond what the guy's numbers are against the next batter, just how he does in certain situations. And it's just so complicated. We get into that point, but it almost takes some of the fun out of it, so.
All right, well, let's get started with some hockey talk. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, January 17th, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohn from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm a free agent.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with this because as Russ and I were at the CHL Top Prospect game in Hamilton last night, I was checking my phone, checking Twitter, watching a little of the Leafs game against Calgary on my phone, which is a beautiful thing. And the video came out of Dougie Hamilton's injury last night. And Kev, it was a bad one. He's already been diagnosed with a broken fibula. He is out of the All-Star game, obviously, being replaced by Jakob Slavin. And this is a big loss, and it was a 3-2 loss for the Hurricanes against Columbus. This is a big loss for Carolina because Hamilton, over the last few years, has been criticized for being sort of a one-way offensive defenseman. He was playing a lot better this year and probably arguably their best defenseman, and now probably out for the season.
Yeah, and he's a shot machine. He just gets shots on goal, and he is an important player in that office. And if you're a strong believer in Corsi, in terms of just getting shots at the net, this guy never saw a shot that he didn't like, and
right.
That's important to the Hurricanes in terms of their offense. So this is, and that they have so much talent on their defense that in one respect you can say, well, they can overcome that. They still got Slavin. They have a defense that has a lot of credible players, but part of who they are is that big time defense, and and because of that, I think it's gonna be an adjustment for them. Like, they're pretty heavily dependent on having a deep defense, and you're not gonna go into trade marketing and find a Hamilton guy that can create that kind of offensive charge or spark. So I think this is a tough, and especially in that division, which is a very difficult division, and it's going to affect everything. This is probably as big a loss as we've seen this season.
And Russ, I think, like I said to you last night, this could mean that Jake Bean gets called up from Charlotte, but it could also mean a guy who has been rumored to be being shopped by Don Waddell, which is Jake Gardner. And he's only in year one of a 4-year contract and has not played well. I think he was leading the team in minus for plus minus, but now with Hamilton out, and if Hamilton's out for the rest of the year, a puck moving guy like Gardner maybe gets a bigger role there.
Yeah, I could see him getting elevated. He certainly could take a lot of shots. He could handle a power play easily. Jake Bean is another one that definitely could come up, and it's not going to be the same like Kevin said, but they'll make the adjustments. It will hurt them somewhat. I mean, you worry about more what it does to the goalie or the goalie that they decide to go with, because right now I'm assuming it's Mrazek, and we'll see what it does to him more than even how it affects the rest. I think they can get past the rest, but we'll see what that part does to him.
Kev, I heard this. I was listening to the Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick's 31 Thoughts podcast last night on my way back from Hamilton, and they were talking about Carolina, and this is before the injury, but they said, and Russ and I have been talking about this as well, the big question with Carolina is the goaltending. I've never been a big fan of James Reimer. He's been up and down. He's had a little up this year, but he's still, I think, questionable as a go-to guy in the playoffs, and Mrazek was there for them last year, but from his history in Detroit, he's sort of an up and down guy. The talk is with Chicago that they're going to trade one of Crawford or Leonard, and that Carolina was in on Leonard before he signed with the Blackhawks. Does that make any sense for you in terms of Leonard possibly to Carolina?
Well, I mean, from the outside looking in, it does, but what it doesn't take into account is that I think Carolina really likes Mrazek, and I think this is one of those cases where, the people on the outside, and because logic dictates that they're a really good team and they should go out and get a goalie who has a more proven record, a little bit more consistent. But inside the organization, I think there's pretty good trust in Mrazek.
Mm-hmm.
He's been pretty good at home, and he joined them just for a chance to start, and I think they believe in him. They see him as a battler. So I'm not so sure they would do that. And I also think that they sort of view. I don't want to say they're the king of analytics, but I think they believe enough in their defensive play that they feel like they can kind of not plug a goalie in and it would be the same no matter who they got. But
right.
I think they believe with the way they play, if they get a credible performance out of their goaltender, they can win. So they don't, need somebody to, save their bacon with, a big goalie game. So I would be surprised at that, but I understand why people, see it that way. Because if you look at, where's their Achilles heel, it does seem like it's in goal, but I think they like Mrazek.
I mean, they'll be active at the deadline. They'll certainly have cap space, but remember, they got Justin Williams. That's a good acquisition right out of the gate when he's ready to play.
Yep, and we're joined by Eck.
Hello, everyone.
Good timing. We just talked about Dougie Hamilton. Let me just start with this, and then I'll hand it over to you, Eck. Kev, yesterday there was some comments made by Matthew Perreault of the Winnipeg Jets regarding an elbow from Jake Virtanen that didn't even get a minor call. He expressed his displeasure at the fact that there wasn't a call, there wasn't any kind of review for supplemental discipline. This is sort of on going in the same vein as the problem with that some people had, that Matthew Tkachuk didn't get reviewed for supplemental discipline for his hits on Zach Kassian. There's been a war of words going on between Kassian and the Flames that apparently resulted in Bill Daly and Colin Campbell calling both Treliving and Ken Holland to basically telling them to cool their jets. I mean, first of all, I love this stuff. I want heated stuff in the battle with Alberta. I want these guys knocking each other like crazy on the ice. But why does the NHL have to sort of try to put the kibosh on it?
Well, I don't get it either. I mean, what makes the NBA so popular is those guys speak their mind. And to be honest with you, that's how I felt when I was reading that yesterday, is that this feels almost NBA-ish, where a guy just comes out and says exactly what he feels and let the chips fall where they may.
Mm-hmm. You're dead on right. That's exactly.
Yeah. And, because I didn't have any problem with it. But I get it. I mean, that's the league's job to go and sit on the guy and say, why are you doing that? But I'm sure, within the dressing room, I think that probably got everyone all fired up. So
I mean, it's funny, Kev, because in regards to Perreault, I watched the video and then he walked it back today. He's only sorry he told the truth. Like he basically said, next game, I guess I'm going to have to take care of it. I'm a small guy. I'm going to get my stick and I'm going to put it to his head. And we always hear, how many times have I said it this year? Players will take care of things if the refs don't. The refs need to do the job here. That's the problem.
Well, the question is whether it would satisfy everyone in the Flames Oilers scenario, because everybody, the situation that would resolve it is Kassian fighting Tkachuk. But Tkachuk is not a heavyweight, and Kassian is. And Kassian is, I think, well, for the Oilers, he's a top 6 forward, but he's not really a top 6 forward. And Tkachuk is probably one of the best players on the Flames, if not the best. Would it satisfy the appetite if Lucic fought Kassian? Would that disarm everything? I don't think it would, because it's involving Tkachuk.
Yep.
No. Well, you never know how it's going to play out in terms of how it will be reviewed, but I don't think so. I mean, the way this needs to be resolved is not today. Like, in other words, because we're too far into the season and points are too important, you let it go. But in the old days, the late Stan Mikita told me one time that Gordie Howe waited like several years to repay him for an event. And, he ended up getting an elbow to the face. And, Gordie essentially said, that was for 1952, 53 or whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. And, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but just a little bit. Like, this needs to be resolved up the road. And, sometimes that's because Tkachuk's always going to have eyes in the back of his head when Kassian's on the ice. Right. That can be just as powerful and impactful as if he did something on the ice, because he's got to worry about Kassian.
Yeah, I kind of wish they both were in the All-Star game so they could take care of it there. That would spice things up.
Yeah, wouldn't it? It would actually be quite fun. But I get it. Like I had a conversation with Tom Laidlaw, the former NHL player, about this, and I said, like, who's right here? Like, I mean, I think Tkachuk is absolutely right when he says, that's not a good trade for us. Like, right. I can't go fight him because I guarantee you he's not afraid of him. But it's not a good trade. And in the playoffs in particular, we hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Saying, we can't have that trade. So, just let it lie. Everyone knows how Kassian feels about it. And at some point next year, next preseason, 2 years from now, we'll see what happens.
Exactly. No, I agree. I told Kevin this story recently, but it's a funny story. I always remember with my daughter when she was only 7 years old and playing in her first like soccer thing, and she got knocked over on the field, and I was one of the like dad coaches coaching. We rotated the coaching and all that as dads at that point. And she came to the side and I said, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm okay, Dad. I got her number." That's what she said to me at 7. I got her number. And I'm like, "You got her number?" And she's like, "Yeah, when a hockey player gets knocked down, you say he got his number. I'm sure he got his number," or whatever. I was never so proud. Like, just like it was a moment of absolute glory for me, even though, soccer is not an eye for an eye sport. But I do miss you're right, that Gordie with those guys. And you remember it. I remember as a fan, like going to Flyers games with the season ticket holder as a kid, waiting for like Thomas Sandstrom to come back to town. Like I remember that, like feeling, you know what I mean? Or Ty Domi to come back to town. And just like that kind of stuff was so, great to me that you knew something was going to happen. And you knew like, and I wasn't reading the papers because there wasn't really that much news then, I mean, there wasn't like the internet then, but I knew as a fan that there was a score to be settled.
And the media had fanned the Flames, back then, like because especially in the 70s and 80s when when somebody would come in and there was a history between the two, you'd go, what can we expect tonight? And oftentimes you would see that. The only I have a problem with that though, because people have forgotten that there were the hockey was viewed outside the hockey world as just having cartoonish violence and all that kind of stuff. I want to tell one more Gordy story because it's one of my favorites, and that is that. And Gordy told me this whole story. There's a famous incident that Gordie Howe went into the corner with Tremblay in Montreal, and when he came out, Tremblay was laid out on the ice. And there's two elements to the story. And Bill Gadsby, who was Gordie's best friend, was on the Red Wings, and he sat next to him, and he said to Gordie, "What happened? How did Gordie?" And Gordie shrugged, and he said, "I don't know. Maybe my thumb got up in his eye." And he said, "That's all I can." And he said, "Oh, okay. So that can happen."
Sure.
So he said they went to dinner and they had steak and went to bed the next day. And he got up the next morning and he opens up and the headline in the sports is Tremblay suffers a multiple fracture of the jaw. And Gordie was having breakfast with him and he said, "That's one powerful thumb you got there, Gordie, that you fractured his thumb, or fractured his jaw." So anyway, I was writing about this incident. So I asked Gordie, I said, "Do you have any memory of why you went after Tremblay?" He goes, "Oh yeah, sure." And he said the year before he had been hired, the Red Wings got knocked out of the playoffs as a color analyst for, I'm assuming, Hockey Night in Canada, but I don't know that to be the case.
Right.
And he was on the train, they were traveling, and he was watching the Montreal Canadiens play bridge. And he commented to Backstrom that Backstrom had made a nice play, and Tremblay had looked up and said, "Gordie Howe, what the hell do you know about bridge?"
Oh boy.
And that's why he crushed Tremblay and broke his jaw in multiple places. It was a comment made on a bridge game. So, hockey was different back in those days.
Yeah, just a little bit. No, but one thing, Kev, that you're right about. Usually the next game, the game that's ballyhooed about, it's going to be 15 rounds of heavyweight bouts. That's not when it happens. I can only remember one instance, and it involved Calgary and the Buffalo Sabres. I think it was 1990 or 91 when Pat LaFontaine had just come over in the trade from the Islanders, and Jamie McCowan broke his jaw with a stick across the face. Wow, and the next game, it was maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks later. That game was in Calgary. When Calgary came to Buffalo, me and a couple of friends went to that game with the expectation that something was going to happen, and it was a Pier 6 brawl with like Donald Audette fighting Gary Suter. I mean, it was like everybody, because it was a star player like LaFontaine, and they had to. It was sort of the code. Okay, you're going to attack our star player. We're going to make sure we get your guys. But very few times do they really do anything that next game when all the attention is on.
Well, here's what you could do. You could do what Andy Bathgate did, and because he was a boxer, he got tired of guys like Gordie Howe spearing him, and he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about it, and the league did sort of act on it. But Gordie Howe did go into the corner with Andy Bathgate with a spear, and Bathgate's move was he would punch you in the solar plexus, and you would go down. And Gordie Howe had seen that, and he actually got Gordie Howe to back down. Bathgate cursed at him, and he threatened him, and he actually got back. This is Andy Bathgate. Like, you look at Andy Bathgate, and you're expecting the elegant finesse player, but he learned how to box at a young age, and Gordie was like, he left him alone after that.
Well, and the other reason why it doesn't happen in the next game is usually the supervisor of officials, or in a bigger case is Coley Campbell, comes to town, goes into the dressing room and, tells that guy, "I'm watching you," and if anything happens, the suspension is going to be harsher. I mean, that's usually how they prevent it from happening in the next game.
And George Peros is going to be at that game. It's on the 29th, I believe. So there you go.
I got two things real quick. Okay. So kind of interesting. I threw it into the private chat, but I know that I don't know if you saw it or not, but
sorry.
No problem. So first of all, I wanted to get into my blog, but I'm going to leave that for the end of the show. And that is just for everybody to think out there. Is Ovechkin the greatest goal scorer of all time? Which I think is it's getting very contentious in my blog very fast. Between Bossy and Ovechkin. So we'll get to that in a second.
Really? That's the matchup? It's Mike Bossy?
That's the one, at least in the blog, in the comments so far. It's
those psychotic Islander fans. That's why.
We'll get right back to that, okay?
I guess it depends on the definition of best goal scorer, because the greatest goal scorer in terms of how dangerous he was, I'd say there's no question in my mind that it's actually Mario Lemieux.
I agree.
He was money. On a breakaway, he was probably a 70 to 80% conversion guy.
I'm gonna go Bobby Hull. I mean, he was feared, and Bobby Hull.
Yeah, but Mario had more tools than his.
He did have more tools. Yeah. I'm talking about just plain old goal scoring.
I think if you get the 1-on-1, like the old 1-on-1 arcade game where you have one forward versus one forward, one goalie versus one goalie, Mario would be the best player out there for sure. There's no.
Yeah, I mean, he just could do more. Again, I'll use my buddy Tom Laylock because I do a podcast with him, but I just asked him about it. He said when he played as a stay-at-home defenseman in his job, he said he feared no man except for Mario. And he said because Mario could do so much. And oops, we have a guest appearance by one of my dogs. Oh, no. So, but he just said that Mario was so big and had so many tricks that it was intimidating to deal with. And Hull had a very dynamic, and he was probably the scariest scorer because like Glenn Hall always talked about having to face him in practice because he'd wind up and just rip it. It was just so scary. Like you just didn't know. First of all, it was harder than everyone shot, and they weren't wearing masks, and it was just a.
The other really interesting one year Mario versus these other guys, right? Is that Mario? If you look at the guys I consider up there, like Mario, I'll give Hull, Ovechkin,
Bossy,
Timonen. I'm not Timonen. I mean, so much. I'm sorry. No, gosh.
Timo Solani?
Yes, thank you, Timo Solani. Most of those guys, if not all of them, except for Mario that I just mentioned, there are wings, right? Like so, when you think about that Mario was a center.
The consistency of Bossy, I think that's what everyone's talking about. Just coming out and just cranking out 50 every year.
1.7619 goals per game is Mike Bossy, which is the highest apparently.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what? You go look down some of the years of Hull. He had a 26.8 shooting percentage. He had a 20.6. He had high 15s, high 16s. Like those were years for Bobby Hull.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, I mean, I think there's really no wrong answer on this.
No, I know.
But Ovechkin, when it's all said and done, it could be him. I mean, the thing that's remarkable about him, and I've said this over and over, is that we will respect him and exalt him more when he's retired.
Yeah,
I believe that. But he has continually scored 50 goals in the era where we say, "Boy, it's hard to score."
Right.
Yeah.
Boy, it's hard to score, and he just gets 50 every year.
Yep.
And that's exactly my point. I mean, that's why I do think he is the best. In that there's no one else. When you look at what he has done since he's come into the league versus everyone else in that same period of time, it's just ludicrous. Right?
Well, let me make one more case for Mario because I feel a little strong about Mario, and that is this: about 2 weeks ago, maybe it was, or correct me if I'm wrong. That video came out that they showed of him being hacked all the way from the red line into the goal. Yeah. And I think people counted either 6 or 7 different penalties. Mario played at that time when he was brutalized.
Oh, yeah.
Brutalized.
Yeah.
And he still was a dominant goal scorer.
Right. No, he was definitely in that time.
You're not allowed to do to Ovechkin what everybody did to Mario.
That's true.
It got even a little bit worse there. Well, Mario played in that. No, Mario played definitely in that dead smack in the middle of that time.
No, he talked about it. That was one of the reasons.
He called the Garage League, and
Now, what about Gretzky? Obviously, Gretzky. Someone around the chat room, 50 goals in 39 games. Gretzky, to me, if he wanted to be the best goal scorer of all time, could he have been?
Maybe. Well, he was for several years, so he was dominant. I mean, 92 goals, and
I mean that's the thing, and Gretzky kind of reminds me of the Wilt Chamberlain thing. When the Wilt Chamberlain wanted to have the most assists one year and just did that. That was Gretzky could almost choose. Basically, am I going to have the most?
The remarkable thing about Gretzky is the fact, and I'm not even Russ knows I'm not the biggest Gretzky fan. But
if that's translation for you,
it's really pretty much a
how could anybody say
that's what I'm saying? That is astonishing thing.
No.
I don't even know how you can say that, Mike.
It's not like he doesn't just like him; he hates him.
Yeah.
Well, Yeah, he does.
But I respect him as a great player. But let me make my point.
Yeah.
He didn't have the greatest shot in the world. He wasn't the fastest skater in the world.
92 goals.
I know, but that's not. You're not letting me make my point. What I'm saying, he scored 92 goals, not having the best shot in the league and not being the fastest skater in the league. That's incredible that he was able to do that.
Yes. No, that's a good. I think he was just flat out the smartest player. I mean, that was the other thing too. Like
I'm glad Gretzky was able to overcome his shortcomings, though.
Well, I think that he suffers from the fact that he was such an incredible player that we don't think of him as great in any particular category. But
he may be the smartest player ever.
Yeah, for sure he was. And that was his game. Is he just played in a different dimension. Like he was playing 3-dimensional chess, and the rest of the players were playing checkers.
See, I can successfully separate emotion from looking at things logically.
Although Mike, it is really a ludicrous statement to say that you don't. I forgot how you phrased it, but the way you phrased it was ludicrous. That's just like saying, Mickey Mantle,
I love retired Kevin.
So
you're totally right. You're 100% right.
Can we move the focus off of me onto something? No.
Yes, let me do that. But I mean, this debate is going on in my comments, so you can still have your comments on it. I definitely, I'm all for. I mean, I'm just throwing my 2 cents out. I really do think it's Ovechkin, and I think what's interesting, Kevin, about what you said, and I want to move on after this, but I do think what you said, that we'll revere him more when he's gone, is absolutely true. But the interesting thing about that is what he does when he leaves could also play into that, because
if he leaves
early and goes back to Russia,
yeah,
which could happen, I think, and plays in Russia, and then becomes the czar of Russian hockey forever, which I think is where he's
going to happen.
That he will take over Fetisov's job, or whoever has that now. Pavel Bure, I'm not sure who has that job, but becomes the czar of Russian hockey, which is where Ovechkin is. Let's admit, I mean, that's Ovechkin's destiny, right? That's there's no two ways about that. I mean, his friends with his connections with the government over there. He's their best hockey player probably of all time.
Or will he replace Putin?
He could.
Putin will be czar for life, and then Ovechkin will move in when
probably the only one who can beat him.
Well, maybe. I will say this: Ovechkin won't let Putin score on him, though.
Let's say, I don't think he'll be using the term czar, because we know what happens in Russia to czars.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other thing, Mike, can I do the other thing?
Go ahead.
Okay. And then we can move. I'm sorry. I want to just get these 2 things out.
No, it might be the same thing, but go ahead.
I'm going to talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets. I don't know if that's what you're going to talk about. Probably not. So, because people usually don't talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets, but I mean, Aaron Portzline today nailed it. From December 8th to today, the Blue Jackets are 13-2-4, right? Which is the best record in the NHL in that period of time. And then maybe the even remarkable thing, and this is not from Portzline, but this is just, I saw this on Reddit and I thought this was fascinating, that the Blue Jackets currently are ahead of all 3 teams they lost those big players to in free agency. Think about that for a second. So they lose Bobrovsky to Florida, they're ahead of Florida. They lose Panarin to the Rangers, they're ahead of the Rangers. They lose Duchesne to Nashville, they're ahead of Nashville as far as points go. That's incredible. I mean, let's just throw that out there, because I mean, remember that how much heat that team was getting for the moves they were making last year to go for it in the playoffs, and that's going to kill them, and they'll never be able to be good again. I love it. I love the fact that they did it. I knew they did it at the time because they had such a strong group of young kids coming up, and they knew it. They knew that. They knew Elvis was going to be good. They didn't know. I mean, is he going to be this good? Is he? He's a rookie. Who knows? He could be having he's on an unbelievable streak right now. But they knew that they could afford to lose. They weren't going to go over. They weren't going to throw Bobrovsky all that money because they had enough confidence in him. And they had such a good team in Cleveland that I think in for their farm team, this is an incredible story. I mean, and it is obviously in Columbus, and it's not going to get much hoopla for that.
The only thing I would add is I think they lucked into Elvis a little for this year, because Korpisalo was the guy slated, and then when he got injured, they had to use Elvis, and he's come up massive.
Yeah, and he started out slowly. Well, I'll just repeat what I said about him the last time we talked about him. It's John Tortorella.
Yeah, right.
Like, he's the perfect coach for this team.
Yep.
This is not based on anything, but I think he likes this team better than any team he's ever coached. I think the players there appreciate Tortorella. They like being hard to play against. They like how demanding Tortorella is. And although he's tough on them, I think it feels like love to the players. I think they somehow see him differently. And I think also that the fact that they lost all those players, that was sort of a rallying cry. And they've kind of gotten excited about it. And I think the depth there was greater than anyone realized. And because look at the players they've lost this year in injury.
Injury wise, they've been devastated.
They had like 8 players injured, but drafting development, they've been able to use players.
And drafted so well.
Guys have filled in tremendously, but Torts definitely gets the nod. He gets to say, "Look, we all counted him out, right?" Teams
love the coach of the year right now.
We all counted him out.
Is he the Adams winner right now?
Yes.
I'd want to think about it a little bit, but I would say yes.
But I'll quibble with you here about till my dying day, I'll believe that what Columbus did last year was stupid. They won a playoff round. They needed to do that, but I don't believe in selling like they did to get players who they knew weren't going to stay there. I give Tortorella all the credit in the world, but Russ and I have been talking about this on the Buzzcast. They're doing it with patchwork guys like Nathan Gerbe and Eric Robinson, and it's not like they've brought up tons of talent from Cleveland.
Yeah, but whenever we talk patchwork, just look at the friggin' Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, they were a patchwork Stanley Cup final.
Well, that's exactly my point. They're doing what Vegas did in their Stanley Cup final year. They're doing what Carolina did during the playoffs last year, plugging in guys like Greg McKegg and calling up guys from Charlotte in the middle of the Calder Cup playoffs to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's possible to win that way.
I'll give you a good example, though. They've identified players for roles like Eric Robinson.
Absolutely.
Robert, I covered him in Princeton, and he showed really good speed there. He's like a 6'2" guy. He can penalty kill, and he plays hard minutes, right? And so that for Torts, that's a great player. He doesn't even care how many points Eric Robinson put us up. He likes everything else he does, and if he gets enough of those guys, Torts can make you a winner.
I'm going to say what I said last year about this too, and it's a column that I wrote. I thought it was the right thing to move. You can't make a blanket statement like you did, Mike, with regard to, that you're against that sort of thing because you're not sitting in Kekalainen's chair.
That's true.
And the Columbus Blue Jackets situation was unique in that they had started out as an expansion team and had huge popularity, and then slowly and gradually that had eroded to the point where the fan base had zero trust in this organization, and they didn't care. Like in Columbus, they didn't care anymore about the team. They had to do something. They had to not only get into the playoffs, they had to win a playoff round.
Sure.
And that was so important to them that I thought it was worth the risk. And I think it may not have been for other franchises, depending on their circumstances, but for the Blue Jackets, it was the right move at the right time. Right. And if I was them, I would say, I would have done it again anyway, just to win that one round. Because the fans need that. And you already sense that now this season in terms of the way the fans now feel about the Blue Jackets. There's a belief there now that didn't exist a year ago.
Sweeping Tampa last year is not winning the Stanley Cup, but it's friggin' close. Like that was an unbelievable. I mean, for the fans of Columbus, that is so far,
sure.
That's their Stanley Cup so far, right? That is
it's like winning the Chico Cup back. I'm going to say that.
I mean, that is crazy, and I think that, and honestly, I wrote the same kind of article last year, Kevin, because when I talked to people out there, they said, "Yeah, would be crazy, Mike. Like you're saying, it would be crazy for both teams to do this, but we know what we have. We know what's coming up, and we know what we're going to get, and we know what these guys are actually worth, and they had their own opinions on guys like Dzingel. They had their own opinions on people that they brought in. They wanted to see what Duchesne was about. I think they did intend to they wanted to keep Duchesne. They wanted to keep Panarin. They went hard to keep Panarin. There's no two ways about it. But, when they don't get them, it could have fallen apart. But the fact of the matter is that winning that Tampa series kept it together. And so they were going to, in their minds, they were going to lose Panarin, Bobrovsky, no matter what they did. So why not try to do something great? Because at least then you can make, when your season ticket sales staff is calling somebody up and saying, hey, we need to, at least then you can do something with it, right? Like at least then they can say, we won this. I know we lost Panarin and Bobrovsky, but we beat Tampa in the first round. Otherwise, I don't have that.
And don't make any mistake. I think Yarmo is going to add at the deadline this year because he sees an opportunity. But because they traded so many draft picks in the deals that they had to do last year, they may have to make more hockey type deals. The one name that I heard has some interest out there that they'd be willing to move out is Josh Anderson. He's been hurt for a little under a month, but I think he's an RFA at the end of the year, and they had a difficult time signing him the last time. So if they're looking to add something, that might be somebody who they move out in a.
I don't think they will. Just from my brief, they really think he is an underrated player in the NHL. I mean, they know he's hard to find, but at the same time, they think he's a potential star that people don't.
Well, I mean, he may be a potential star, but when you have 4 points in 26 games and then you get hurt.
This year, anything can change, but yeah. One last thing here, Mike. I'm going to show you this. Everyone everybody's opinion on this one.
Hideous.
The Colorado Avalanche jerseys here for the Stadium Series.
Hideous.
Yeah, it's weird because it almost looks like when you put the three together, it makes one logo. That's what's weird about this picture.
Yeah,
I like it.
It is not flattering.
No, I do. I like when teams try something different. Like we've seen how many times we've seen. Like I was getting a little bit sick of like kind of what Nashville did of everybody going back to like an old throwbacks. I would have loved it. Totally loved it if they could have worn the Colorado Rockies jerseys. That would have been something that I would have been all about. Like that would have been something to remember. Obviously, the Colorado Rockies, franchise is still in existence, but hey, it's worked with Nashville and it's worked with Winnipeg and Phoenix. They've done it. When Winnipeg's worn their own jerseys, but even though the old Colorado Rockies are now the New Jersey Devils, but I think that I love the Rockies old jersey. I think the Colorado state flag and the big C thing is one of the coolest things on
that might be a marketing problem because I don't think they own the.
Yeah, I don't think they could have done it either.
Yeah,
but that state, they could have used that C. And there's certain things they could have done, but I like it's a mountain, it's an A, it's a lot of things at once. I think it's kind of cool. It is trying to do a lot for sure. But
I think the Oakland A's should wear this during the summer.
But what I also like about this is everyone hates it. So the fact of that matter is that, I'll buy one of these for $25 in 3 months, and because no one is going to want it. But
to me, they look like high school band uniforms.
Yeah, I honestly, I think they're terrible.
I can see that a little bit. I can. Go ahead, Mike.
Kev, so since the last time we talked, Gerard Gallant,
stunning,
gets fired in Vegas. Yeah. I thought. I heard somebody say that they were Christine Simpson from Sportsnet apparently was doing a story on Vegas, and she was looking at the Vegas website and saw Pete DeBoer as the new head coach and thought that the Vegas website had been hacked.
Yeah.
You got it at the right time. I know. I heard about this too.
Yeah,
it's just stunning. When you think about the relationship that Gallant had, like he seemed perfect for that team, and what I really like about him. I just remember during the playoffs when I covered him the season they went to the final. I saw a lot of their games, and he was in a post game, and someone was asking about the power play. It had been on a slump, and he said, "I know you guys are going to ask me that, and I know that we haven't scored, but and I looked at the analytics numbers and all that, but when I watch him, it just feels like we're doing the right things." And I just thought, God, I got to admire that guy. And lo and behold, over the next 3 or 4 games, they started scoring again, and he was absolutely right. I think he has a good feel. I think he's a player's coach, and I think when a team struggles and you're a player's coach, you're kind of on the hot seat. And I'm just guessing that's kind of what happened to him, that they felt like they needed a tougher, coach because he really believes in his guys, and he won't be out of work long.
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah.
And Russ, I want to get your opinion.
No, he's not going to be out of work long. He will definitely get a job.
Right.
What's interesting is we had this debate, and Kevin, you really would be great for this. We had this debate after it happened about the Detroit Red Wings and him, and like the concept of and people were saying, he wouldn't go to Detroit because it's too big of a rebuild. And I was saying, well, you can't diminish the fact he played there, the fact that Yzerman's there, his old line mate's there.
Well, this is all I can tell you about that because Yzerman plays the close to the vest. Yzerman does love Gerard Gallant. They were buddies. Gerard Gallant protected him. did everything. He went in the corners for him and all that kind of stuff. But just last week, in one of the strangest displays I've seen in a long time, Steve Yzerman did an interview with Ken Cal, the radio guy, not Fox TV, even though it appeared on Fox TV. He did it with the team radio guy, Ken Cal, in which he came on and explained what he was thinking for the prospects that are down in the minors in terms of when they're going to be out. And he basically said Jeff Blashill is doing, I think it was either he said exceptional or extraordinary job. And I've since season ticket renewals are due this week, that it was sort of ordered by above that he do that so that fans would have a general idea of what was going to happen, because there's been huge speculation about how, Blashill needed to go. And I don't think Steve Yzerman feels that way. And he seemed a little angry when he was doing it seemed to me anyway, when he was doing that. And so it seemed to me like he's going to make a change this year. Now, we all have been around long enough to know that anything could happen. So, and then the other thing is that I had a GM tell me that Gerard Gallant is not the best guy for a rebuilding team. Like he said, I love the guy, but he said, I'm not sure that, Gallant is a guy for a veteran team. He felt a better fit. And he said, I'm not sure Gallant is wired to come in there with, 8 guys who haven't been in the league. And, he doesn't think that he could do the best with that situation.
Well, the chatter was apparently that Dallas might have been interested in Gallant. They were interested in the past in Gallant. But yesterday, Jim Nill came out and guaranteed Rick Bowness the head coaching job for the rest of the season. So that would lend itself that it's not going to be Dallas unless Gallant.
Well, unless Gallant said, I want to take the rest of the season off.
Right. Exactly.
But look at this, because if you remember the debate we had the other day, and I'll ask Kevin what he would do, but if you had a choice, Kevin, between Dallas or Detroit, if you were Gerard Gallant, which one would you pick? And I said it's going to be Dallas.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I the thing about it is the rebuild in Detroit is at a point now where you're not even sure it's going to be successull. Right. That's the issue. Like in some cases,
disagreed. Thought it would be Detroit.
I said it. I didn't say it would be Detroit. To be fair, I said I don't know why. I said you got to give Detroit more credit in this because of what has happened. I think that it's possible that it's Detroit. I don't think it's a slam dunk between those two teams.
I'd have to say it's a slam dunk.
Okay,
because they got Dallas. Has Bishop. They're contending. Where Detroit, they don't have the one guy that you're wowed about. Like when. Before people were saying when even Edmonton was terrible, but they got Connor McDavid and Draisaitl. Right. You can't say that about Detroit.
Kevin, I said that Detroit might have a chance if they win the lottery and they're drafting Alexis Lafreniere.
Maybe. No, that's a good point. But I watched a little bit of that CHL All-Star, and I thought, boy, fans in Detroit they got all their hopes pinned to getting, the worst they can be is 4th. And I looked at him, boy, I don't know, I don't see another Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel.
I think Lafreniere could be.
Lafreniere is top, but I think there seems to be a fall off for me from 1 to 2.
There's a fall off, but Byfield's a really good player.
He's good, but
big guy, right?
He did not have the best game yesterday.
I barely noticed him.
Right.
Yeah. I think that if you're Seattle, you're nuts not to bring in Gallant. That's my opinion. Like,
they have to get a name first. I think they need a name, and then they can get a coach.
Well, there's one. It makes perfect sense for Gallant to go there, but does Gallant want to do that again?
You're right, and I thought that too. Because if you're Gallant, you're like, wow, I really did that once, and that honestly, of course, he's Gallant's smart enough to know that it's not all him. He knows that team was amazing and that he did a great job with it. But then there's other things that happened there for Vegas to be that good. Like
when are we getting a name for Seattle? I'm getting tired of this.
I still want the Kraken.
I'm all for the Kraken, but I don't think it's going to be.
I want to tell you all though that I averted catastrophe and disaster while this is going on here, because I just rescued my American Express card from my baby pit bull, who was already using half of my MasterCard.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, I have it on. I have it on my table. Like, I ordered airline tickets today, so I had it sitting on my table, and I knocked it off. And wherever she is, she made a beeline for it, and I snatched it out of her mouth.
See,
I have a great story for you guys along those lines. Ready for this? All right, so we're cutting back a little bit, trying to save some money. My daughter's going to college, we traded one of our cars, and I got myself a used car, like a good used car, kind of car I always wanted. I actually always wanted a Honda Element. I like them. I think they're cool.
Yeah, those are good. They're nice cars. I like those.
Yeah, you can lay the seats down. You can camp in them. They're really, really cool. So I got a Honda Element 2004 car. It's old, 200,000 miles, but it's in great shape.
No, they run forever, those cars.
Yeah, and I love it. The doors it's really cool. So I'm driving home. 2 days ago, I park it. I'm like, my wife's like, "Oh, great, you got a car." I'm like, "Yeah, I think this is going to be perfect for us because I'm tooling around and stuff like that. I wanted my daughter to have a car in college that she would be safe with and all that stuff." So she's taking one of our other safer cars. So that night, my wife, and they gave me like 6 keys with the car, right? So they gave me 6 keys with it. Sorry about the story, but it's really hilarious. So that night, after I go to sleep, my wife decides that she's like, "Oh, there's 6 keys." She goes out and says, "Some of these keys don't work in the door." She's like, they said some of them might not work, but they just gave me all the keys. Cool. So she takes the keys that don't work opening the door and throws them out. And then I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." And I say to her, I'm like, "Wait a second, you really shouldn't throw keys out. I think that seems like a bad idea." She said, "Well, they don't work in the door." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." Turns out the Honda Element has a set of keys for the door and a set of keys for the car to turn the car on. All right. So she threw away all of my ignition keys. All right. So the next morning I get up and I'm like, I'm going out. I'm like, I'm going to go. And I'm like, "Oh man, the ignition keys, none of these keys are left. Oh, turn the car on." I'm like, "What the heck?" Such a hassle. I drove 2.5 hours with this car the other day. I go inside and realize that not only did she throw out the keys, she took the trash out that day on Thursdays, which we never do because we hardly have any trash. And the trash had been taken away. So I'm sitting now at home without keys to the car at all. Oh man,
great, wonderful.
It's fun, literally a rocket scientist, right? That's the.
Oh yeah, she's a PhD, and she's so pissed at herself. And I was like, literally, the moment you get so angry, and then you just can't help but laugh at the same time. It's like I am so angry.
Let's finish.
Anyway, I just wanted to say, it was just calm my mind's kind of crazy. Can you on Mike go and continue?
No, I was going to say, let's finish off on a rumor here, or on some trade speculation. Last night, Darren Drager of TSN talked about the Edmonton Oilers looking for a top 6 forward, and that they were perusing the Maple Leafs for either Kasperi Kapanen, Andreas Janssen, or Alex Kerfoot. All of them in the $3 million range, all of them locked up for 3 or 4 years, which makes sense. It's cost certainty. They're all talented forwards. I look at the Oilers, and I look at their depth, Kev, and their 2 best prospects are Broberg, their first-round pick from last year, and Evan Bouchard, who I think is going to be a very good NHL defenseman. And I look at the Leafs, and I look at their situation defensively, and the fact that the guy that they would desperately want played for Sheldon Keefe and played for Kyle Dubas in Sault Ste. Marie, and his name is Darnell Nurse. And there's been talk about them trying to get him signed on a long-term deal. He's arbitration eligible. To me, that kind of deal makes a lot of sense, especially if they can't get Nurse signed long-term. But Edmonton their problems are defense too, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a hard one for them to make. Yeah, because of that, I see it from your perspective. I do, but they got what you have here, 2 teams that are both with the same issues.
Yeah.
So, although the Oilers have a secondary issue, which is they need secondary scoring. So
yeah.
So
the Brendan Dillon's name keeps coming up too. Obviously,
he's going to be hot on the trade market. Everybody likes him. So,
by the way, can everyone spell Brendan the same way in the future? Like, is there a way we can? Is the one who's Brendan with an E? Like,
you got to look it up every time you're writing Brendan. You got to look it up. Yeah,
It's funny the players that I can spell really well whose names are terrible because they've been on the trade deadline like I can spell Dustin Byfuglien, no problem whatsoever. I can spell Galchenyuk, no problem whatsoever.
How about Riley with the IE instead of
yeah. And Austin Matthews was a weird one at first, but I got that one. But yeah, this one, Brendan Dylan. God. But yeah, he's a hot name out there. And I talked to some people about it the other day, and I haven't put him on the rumor chart yet. People were asking me why I hadn't put him on the rumor chart yet. And I know he's going to be a hot name. I agree with you, Kevin. But what I couldn't find out from at least my San Jose people is if they were really selling, like if they or if they still felt like they had a chance here.
Well, I think right now they feel like they have a chance, but let's see how it feels.
Yeah, I agree with you. So it's hard to put him on there yet because I don't think it's in there. It's in Doug Wilson's wheelhouse right now. Like I think that whether or not it does become that eventually or not, and which brings me up to Galchenyuk too. I read about yesterday, and he's another one who people are talking about. Another one I can't put on the chart because I'm really talking to people out there, and they're like, there's nobody who really trusts enough to take Galchenyuk.
Yeah, no, they don't want him. Yeah, no, I think there's fairness to that, but this takes one. I think somebody will take him.
Yeah,
because there's talent there's skill. You always want to believe that you've got the people that can bring the most out of the. There's always teams like Lou Lamoriello was always a guy that liked to take the reclamation projects. So
as did Brian Burke, right, in his day too.
Yeah, no, that's
right.
All
right, I guess that's all the time we have for today, folks. Everybody, thanks, Kevin, so much for joining us. Everybody, have a fantastic weekend. We're getting
quick predictions on the football.
Oh yeah, because I got 3 or 4 right last week. Everyone was telling me, I was dead on, right?
I'll go Kansas City and San Francisco.
What do you think, Kev?
I'm a Green Bay guy, so
Kansas City, Green Bay.
So
State Farm will be very happy.
I'm Tennessee and Green Bay, and
the exact opposite of me.
What?
The exact opposite of me.
Exactly opposite of you. But I had Tennessee last week too. I'm staying on this Tennessee bandwagon. Okay. I think it sucks that you can't have like a Super Bowl in Nashville. That would be fantastic. Anyway.
Well, you could have one. It's just
not
this year.
Yeah,
just not now, right?
No.
All right, folks. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you